OO.
OO Ken will be going first and Melson will be going second.
Are all the judges in this room already?
Hi, I'm Tejas. I'm here.
Okay, hold on. Yeah. Tejas is here. Is
Hi,
Shireen here?
yeah, I'm here.
Adia, you're here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, is Cheng here?
Yeah, here.
Is Ian here?
Yes, I'm here.
Is Pei here?
Yep, I'm here.
And Shireen?
Yeah, I'm here.
Cool. All right, welcome everyone to the grand finals of Malaysia National Schools British Parliamentary 2020. Woo! I'd like to firstly congratulate all teams on making it this far. In opening government, we have KMPK Di Hatiku. In opening opposition, we have Never Gonna Run Around and Desert You. In closing government, we have Don't Wanna Cry. And in closing opposition, Cempaka A. My name's Ernest. I'll be a chair for this grand finals. Paneling alongside me will be Adia, Cheng, Ian, Pei, Shireen, and Tejas. Just a couple of house rules for everyone in the audience. Please keep your mics muted at all times. That goes for non-speaking debaters as well. If debaters wish to raise POI, please do so in the form of a paper or type it in the chat. Or if the speaker consents to it, you may also unmute your mic briefly and say point or POI, after which the speaker may choose to accept or reject your POI. Speeches are 7 minutes long, and without further ado, on the motion, this House prefers a world with memory writing technology. I'll first call upon the Prime Minister, Pavan, to open the debate. Here.
Hello, can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll be starting my speech. Before I start my speech, let me just clarify. Any points of information, please give them through your mic. Okay, thank you. Now, I'll be starting in 3, 2. Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, as Prime Minister, let me first clarify what is this debate actually about. This debate is about whether or not we should have memory writing technology in our world, in today's society. And it's between a world where memory writing technology exists and is usable and is successfully capable of rewriting memories or creating new memories, and in a society where it does not exist and in a society of status quo. Now, this debate is not about the importance of memories, but about the use of the machine and the impacts that this machine can have on people, on memories, and on society in itself. Now, what is the definition of a machine? This machine is capable of rewriting or creating new memories, meaning that it can change memories that occurred in the past or fabricate ones that never existed in the first place. But to the person who's being affected, it would feel like it was something that happened in the past. And now, our mechanism of the day for this machine. This machine is distributed by a private, internationally run organization that first screens people who are potential buyers or potential users to make sure that they are governments and also bodies that are capable of operating a machine with enough professionalism. That's number one. Number two, are responsible enough to use the machine without malpractice. And third of all, have the least possible odds to misuse this machine for oppression and for other dark agendas. And now, moving on to the second part of the mechanism. In our mechanism, we will create a guideline on which what kind of memories can be altered, in what conditions can a person be subject to memory alteration, the degrees of consent required by a person before their memories are altered, and also last of all, certain guidelines to the extent of which a memory can be altered when it changes someone's life as a whole. Hence, these guidelines not just stand as a guideline for people and where you can use this, but also stands as a law to which we can hold people who misuse this machine accountable. First of all, we have already told you that we're only giving it to certain people, hence reducing the risk of it being misused in the first place. But in the second place, we also have laws and regulations to hold people who misuse it accountable. And we also, now the next thing is, what is our burden of proof on this house? We have to prove that a machine as such will be capable of helping people and improving various sections of society, given that there might be a small infinitesimal chance of it being misused. Now, moving on to my argument of the day, which is the idea of trauma. Now, in status quo, the world is undergoing a current mental health crisis. Though people talk about cancer and heart issues more, mental health is one of the biggest problems faced by today's society. Mental health issues are more rampant than we think, and almost 1 in 10 people in our society today are faced by depression. This is even more exacerbated by society today, which imposes all kinds of stigmas and etc. on the younger generation especially. And these diseases include things such as depression, anxiety, and various other diseases. Who are involved in these diseases? These involve people who have a genetic predisposition to these diseases, and they won't be discussed in this debate because that can't be cured by anything other than medication. But we're talking about people who have had past trauma in their life, children who have been abused by their parents, women who have been raped, soldiers who have been to war and have post-traumatic stress disorder caused by violent things that they have noticed or observed, or caused by things that have been done to them over the years, which has formed a permanent part of their psyche, which they are unable to forget. Now, rewriting memories is the only alternative to the current measures in place, which is medication and therapy. However, modern psychiatry does target to solve the root cause of the disease to help people who are going through mental health problems. However, it is only effective to a certain extent and only works for certain people. And for some people who are undergo trauma, for the rest of their lives, they are forced to spend their lives on a certain type of medication to ensure that they are able to enjoy a normal quality of life that other people take for granted. Now, on side government, we propose to you a solution, which is to rewrite the memories that are the source problem in itself. Modern psychiatry, now, our first analysis is how is it going to help these people? Who are involved? Now, these possible effects of changing memories. The effects of changing memories that, first of all, they'll be able to forget the entire memory themselves. And this is all carried out based on their consent. Or either, secondly, depending on the level of consent given by the patient, we can alter the memory to change the severity of the trauma that happened in the past. Which means that although there might be an idea that forgetting certain memories might make you forget for certain lessons that you learn in life, however, changing the severity and the violence portrayed in these memories will let you learn those same lessons, but at the same time allow you to move forward from that trauma because it's either lesser or no longer existent in your life. Now, moving on to my second analysis, which is the societal benefits when people are cured of trauma. When people are rid of their past trauma, when their mind is no longer continuously replaying memories that have happened to them, that of their abuse and etc., this causes their mental health problems to be vastly more treatable, to make it more realistically treatable, and to make them able to not just mitigate the symptoms and mitigate the effects, but to completely recover, which is something that is almost never happening in mental health treatment of today, which leads to various societal benefits. First of all, we minimize the mental health crisis that goes on around the world and create a vast majority and create a society where the majority of them do not face mental health issues. We can't say that we'll create a society that is completely free of mental health issues, because various other mental health issues can be caused by other things, such as genetics and various other physiological factors. Hence, we create a more peaceful populace. What is this effect? It creates an ultimate ripple effect where most people who do commit abuse and etc. in today's society are found to be people who have experienced this in the past, people who have been victim to this vicious treatment in the past. Hence, when they no longer have the memory and no longer have the trauma imprinted on their brain of this vicious treatment, they are less likely to do it in their future. And what does this cause? Ultimately, it causes a ripple effect where once you treat this one circle of society, they will lessen the amount of abuse and etc. that causing trauma to the next generation, and hence the result is that mental health issues caused by trauma will progressively decrease. And this is the first step towards solving the global mental health crisis that we face in our world. With that, I'm very, very proud to propose.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister, for that speech. To start the case for opening opposition, I'll call upon Ken, the leader for opposition. Thank you.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Right. Hold on a sec. Right. Speech starting in 3, 2, 1. Memory is a part of who you are. It's a part of your identity that cannot be separated from you. If you rewrite your memory, you aren't you anymore. You're a totally another person. You don't think that's inherently good. There's a distinction to be made. Real and fake experiences do matter. The distinction is clear. Why is it that under government side, trauma is worse? Understand that under their side, given how it's so easy to just rewrite memory and just get rid of trauma, that means that inherently there's an inherent escape route for everyone, right? Which means to say that this inherently disincentivizes people from actually setting up proper support structures, from improving those support structures to actually deal with trauma, right? This, for example, means that now they have memory technology, people can use that excuse to, for example, not solve problems of rape culture. This can, for example, say that people wouldn't have any more incentive to, for example, have better therapy or have better psychotherapy, or, for example, parents to care for a child better, right? Because they just know they can rewrite the memories, right? We think in these cases, there's less incentive for it. We think you don't solve the problem, you merely solve the symptoms of it. We solve the problem of it under our side, right? But secondly, you see that people who abuse people are basically people who are victims of this abuse, right? That's exactly why we need to set up more support structures, right? We think inherently, even if we do take care of your best and you inherently do change memories, like why do we think it's inherently bad, right? Because under my speech, I'm going to bring you 4 arguments, right? Number one, that the hardships do matter, that sometimes in life, even though it's bad, we need to be Batman and combat the fact that sometimes trauma does happen, like how Batman accepted the fact that his parents are dead. But secondly, why is it that we tell you it will destroy social interactions? Thirdly, on how we tell you that then on the outside, there's more incentive for support structures such as psychotherapies. And fourthly, why we tell you that government oppression can still happen and we don't think the model under their side is barely sufficient, right? Also, given that their models are quite inaccessible to the majority because they see there's a lot of like bureaucratic process, like giving some level of consent, some guidelines and whatever. We think under their world, then they make this sort of things very inaccessible. So it kind of goes against their own, like it kind of undermines their own efficacy, given like they are quite stringent amount of regulations, right? So we don't think that's inherently good. But we think at the end of the day, given it's done by a private corporation as opening government characterized, we think still that private corporation can still sell it to governments, right? Which at the end of the day, people who are handling this still have their own agency to do whatever they want, right? We don't think in some countries that the accountability is not that good, right? We think at the end of the day, there will still be a chance for abuse, right? First argument, why is it that inherently processes do matter, hardships do matter? Understand the case under government is a utilitarian case, right? Meaning that it's for the sake of pleasure, right? For example, like removing trauma or imprinting very pleasure memories, which you think everyone will do, right? Means that inherently, people are inherently utilitarian, right? Why is this pleasure inherently unmeaningful? Understand in life that happiness isn't necessarily the main reason that makes life meaningful, right? Rather, it's experiences and actually suffering and going through the sufferings and actually striving to be better and actually coming up and getting up from falling down that actually things that make people enjoy your life, right? And then people think that the life is actually somewhat meaningful, right? We think the hardships are the things that actually give life some form of meaning and makes life a little bit more better. And we think it teaches us to be better and inherently strive, right? We think that inherently, the only way to then deal with the trauma is to actually face it head on, right? We think that coming out of it stronger as hell, like for example, Batman, right? We think those are the sort of situations that we want under our side, right? We think that to just escape from your hardship isn't exactly something that's inherently good. We think inherently just forgetting it. We don't think that in that case, firstly, you don't get any sort of closure because it's fake closure. But secondly, to go through hardships, and to actually go through it inherently gives you even more happiness. We think those things are in fact even more empowering, and those things mean that it makes your life a lot more better. It makes your life a lot more meaningful, a lot more quality, right? And basically, in life, under their world, you never overcome challenges because every single time you're just gonna go back to your memory writing machine and just rewrite your memory. Secondly, you never want to strive because you just got implant those memories in there, right? Meaning that you never have to work for anything, just implant those memories in, right? But thirdly, now you never have any real meaningful experiences, right? Which basically means to say that under their world, everything is inherently fake, right? We think that something is inherently screwed like that, right? The analogy here is basically a pleasure machine, right? Which is quite similar to this, right? Basically, according to many surveys, like people are always being asked whether they want to plug themselves into a pleasure machine, right? We tell you that people are generally do not want to do it because they know that there's a distinction between real and fake memories, right? We think that at the end of the day, They are living a fake life under Gulf. We don't think it's inherently meaningful. We think it's in fact immoral to just go ahead and erase people's identity. We think it's inherently bad, even if they do consent to it. Because it's an irrational consent, given that they are affected by their own mental state, right? We think it's irrational consent at the end of the day, right? I think basically meaning that getting basically realistic things under our world are in fact more likely not to be more pleasurable and also more meaningful in our life, right? Understand under their world, right? There's also the shot and chance of you actually realizing certain things, right? Which is my second point, right? Understand how social interactions happen under their side. It inherently gets ruined because the way that you erase your identity, because given the fact that memories literally dictate your life, right? Because your memories are literally who you are, right? Means that the point which you rewrite it means that you're inherently rewriting your identity, right? You're not you anymore, you're someone else, right? At that point, you're not the same person anymore to everyone else around you, right? This inherently means that you interact differently with other people, meaning that people don't even look at you and think that it's you anymore. They literally think it's another person, right? For example, this means that people are literally alienated from you. Right? This means that family and friends, instead, in the best case scenario, literally in the worst case scenario, literally distance away from you, and your relationships inherently worsen because now they don't think it's you anymore. It's literally not you. It's really someone else they never met before, right? Because your personality is completely changed, right? But secondly, even at the best case, right, people still look at you with frown eye. Right? People don't really treat you as the person that you really were before this, right? We think at that point, we don't think it's really that good, right? We think it's inherently screwed up, right? The simple thought experiment here is, for example, like Oman, right? Like for example, everyone, like he thinks that everyone does love him, and like, but inherently at the back of his behind his back, people actually hate him, right? We think inherently he does deserve the right to actually know that he's actually being hated on. We think inherently it's more meaningful, right? We don't think fake experiences count as something that's meaningful, right? Understand the point in which you interact with these people means that you also have a chance of learning of your past, right? Which means if they, for example, tell you that, oh, you were raped in the past or you were traumatized in the past, right? This means that it leads you to a certain realization, right? Meaning it causes you even more trauma and you need to rewrite memory again, right? Therefore, creating an internal dependency upon memory writing machines to constantly get away from trauma, right? We think that if it's that bad, we don't think life is even worth living anymore, right? Because you're just living it for the sake of pleasure. We don't think it's good. We think you need to face certain demons in your life, right? Thirdly, why do we think there's also that in a world without memory writing technology, have more incentive for support structures, right? Understand that under their world, there's no incentive because people can just use the bailout card, right? We think under our side, we actually have more incentive to create support structures, like for example, mental illness centers, more education, for example, more therapeutic improvements, more psychological assistance technology, more rehab, even family being better off, right? We think under their world, traumas are undermined, we think under their illnesses are undermined, and it reduces them to simple things. Right? We think under our world, we still want to solve the problems. We solve the root cause of problems by actually having things happening in the first place. Right? Lastly, government oppression. Understand this still happens under their side. The point is private corporations do serve the governments, and governments can use it. Meaning, there's 3 levels to this. One, they can probably rewrite soldiers to be merciless creatures and brutes that will do anything to kill people. Secondly, they might even rig this sort of thing to literally indoctrinate citizens into supporting them to be pro-government and to erase memories of, for example, genocides or something atrocious in the past. But thirdly, there's also religious parental coercion into rewriting memory to be, for example, like a religious person, which we tell you is against the consent of people, which we tell you is against what life really does stand for. Under our world, we get real experiences. Under Gulf's world, you get fake experiences, side with opening up.
Thank you, Leader for Opposition. To continue the case for OG, I'll call upon Rashvin, the Deputy Prime Minister, to continue the case for OG. Here.
We believe in today's debate, team opening opposition has been a party which oppresses and suppresses the right of a person to change, because we are actually giving you a solution where we can give a change. We do not let someone be defined by their past. So what I'll be doing in my today's debate, I'll be engaging some rebuttals, providing one argument, and at the same time giving you a clear comparative analysis on what is happening in today's debate. First and foremost, there was a question about who deals with trauma better. Okay, they are arguing to us in a fact which they believe it is okay to let people to suffer. It is okay to let people go through hardships. But we are telling to you, the solution is exactly right in front of our eyes. When you can help person to remove those memories. Why are you wasting so much of time, energy, and money, putting people to rehabilitation centers, putting people to trauma centers where they have to go months and months before they can actually find a solution? Even if they are able to put people into traumatic centers and rehab centers, the final outcome is not guaranteed. You are not still assured that these people can actually come out of it. There's a probability of reoccurrence of these memories where people can very easily crumble back right away. Therefore, the idea of putting people in rehabilitation centers and traumatic centers very actually fails in the very first beginning, because in our world we provide you an immediate solution which their house fails to provide. Number two, we believe that site opening opposition is purposely putting people through suffer. You're actually depressing their right when you already have the solution. Okay, the objective here is for us to help these people to achieve happiness, is for them to achieve a stable mindset. But what you are doing is you're putting them to unnecessary suffering. You're letting them to suffer through hardships, again and again go through memories. Let's use their example, rape victim. How would you feel when the whole society looks at you as a rape victim? Would you be brave enough to even walk out in the public? Definitely no. Instead, in our world, we take away the memory from your wife. We alter the memory into a better one. Therefore, you're more likely to stand out in the society, more likely to be accepted into the society. Now, they have told us 3 irrelevant points, such as rewrite soldiers' memory to be merciless, indoctrinate, where people can misuse, and against religious parents. We believe it is not a problem in today's world, where we have appointed a special body to actually monitor these things to take place, where we will not simply give to governments, simply sell to governments for their own use or to be misused. So all these 3 arguments fall there itself. Now, moving on to my first argumentation, why we believe it is extremely important for us to use this memory technology. First of all, we are going to bring to you and introduce you the idea of inception, where in our world we believe we can bring a greater difference, where we can create professionals. Now, first and foremost, what do we actually mean by create professionals? We will be planting ideas about memories where people might not follow, but this mission will actually help. Now, let's look at an example of leaders, global leaders in the world. Okay, we would alter their memories at the moment which they begin to corrupt, at the moment which they learn how to be corrupt. We will alter these memories into a situation where they actually get to see how happy the people are, how are they being praised by the people because of their good deeds. When we do these kind of acts, in the future, the global leaders are more likely going to take into account this social relation between these leaders and also the people, because we have removed the place where they learn to become corrupt, that they learn to become these mistakes in the past. Now let's look at doctors. The problem in current status quo is that there are a lot of medical mishaps that take place, where for new medical doctors, a lot of medical mishaps, given a chance where we can plant memories and ideas of them being in professional surgeries, complex surgeries. Therefore, we actually reduce the risk of medical mishaps happening again in the future. In this way, we actually benefit the society. Now, one last thing in this analysis, where I actually have to agree with Team OO. They told us we can exactly change a person. We redefine the person. But let's look at how we are doing this. Let's look at criminals. The problem in status quo is when a person does a crime, when a person is punished, he is still more likely going to repeat that crime again. But given to us this chance to use this machine, we actually remove the memories of him getting into the crime, remove the memories of him learning how to do this crime. Now in this world, the probability of him repeating his crime is much more lower. He's more likely going to become a normal citizen in the part of society, because we have deleted or altered the patch where he learned how to commit this crime. So we are actually changing a person from a bad person into a good person. Why we tell to you that we will not misuse this? Because it's regulated by the body. Imagine putting people to prison for years and years, expecting them to change, but when they come out and they don't change. At least in our world, we provide you an immediate solution. The urgency to solution actually exists in our world, where we can right away change a person. Now, what have we proven to you in this analysis? When there are less crime rates, when they are more professional, when leaders are more interested in social contracts, imagine if we could use this mission to Kim Jong-un. Kim Jong-un is now letting his whole country to starve and under famine. If we could delete the part where he was taught to be a dictator, he was raised to be a dictator, and we show him the positive parts of how flourished his country could be if he were to use his right power in the right resources. Definitely, Kim Jong-un would be an opposite person, and he might even end up being the best leader in the world you could ever see. Now, let me give you a comparative of a world with the machine and a world without the machine, where side opening opposition is claiming. Now, let's look at opposition side. They tell to us that it is okay to let people suffer. But what we are arguing is, even if they are able to change, at the end of the day, the memory still exists in their mind. It is still not deleted. One simple trigger and they could still fall back to the whole lot back memories. Now, let me look at the majority of cases. All of us definitely have a memory or a moment we want to forget. Let it be an embarrassing one or a shameful one. Imagine if you were to have a bad memory in your workplace, in your class maybe, okay? And you are now more likely not going to be able to stand up, not be able to be yourself. Instead, if we were able to remove this memory, these people are now more likely going to be accepted by the people. They are more likely able to show themselves out to the society. Before I move on, yes, POI.
Yeah, so isn't this principally contradictory? Because you say that even the smallest of things can be changed, but you say that you only allow certain memories to be erased from the person's mind. Why is this consistent with the analysis coming out from Prime Minister?
I can't hear. Can you please repeat quickly?
So you said that some memories, allow people to change only certain memories, but this is inconsistent with the type of argument that came up from Prime Minister.
You're muted.
You're still muted.
You're muted.
Oh, sorry. We are still in a world where we are given this chance, we are altered and we're able to create new memories. Okay. Now the last level of analysis, let's look at these minorities, people who have gone through domestic abuse, rape cases. Imagine how detrimental is it to their productivity, to their growth in real life. Every time they walk out, every time they face the society, they are being marked. Imagine how would people look at them. Instead, in our world, we provide an urgent solution to solve this problem. As a whole, we are also able to mitigate the problem of these memories haunting them and preventing them from developing as a whole person in the society. So what have we told you in today's debate? Number one, we have given you a comparison on how this debate would look like in a world where we use the machine and a world where we don't use the machine. And we have also told you how we're able to rewrite trauma and we're able to create professionals in our world. Therefore, all these reasons have been followed to propose.
Thank you, DPM. To conclude the opening half of the exchange, I'll call upon the Deputy Leader of Opposition, Melson, to present his speech here.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay, cool. Just a few seconds. All right. I'm going to be starting in 3, 2, 1. I think the first step to liquidation of a person itself is to erase their memory. And this is what is side government is trying to bring to us today. Okay, a few rebuttals on my end here before I move on to the extension brought up by my first speaker, right? So they talked to us about how the idea of trauma and mental health will be significantly reduced, or the idea of trauma being cut out from that very person itself from the very first place, right? Now, let's talk about their first argument of the idea of trauma, right? You see, the idea of trauma being removed from that person's memory itself, right? Which means that they have zero recollection of what actually happened on that day, which means that there is still a chance of a possibility of that memory is going to be coming back. And what is going to happen is they're going to fall into trauma again. And this is going to create like a vicious cycle in where they fall into trauma again and they go into this machine and it comes out again, do the same thing again, it goes back in and comes out. You see, this is a vicious cycle loop that happens, right? Okay, they talked to us about also how mental health issues would decrease. Now, I think that the problem here is that we're erasing memories and altering memories, right? I think mental health issue comes out from the lifestyle of the individual itself, right? That means like how stressful it is from an individual and how these individuals actually fall into depression due to their lifestyle, right? It's not about memories here, right? So I think that point on their end actually is completely eliminated from here. And also it goes to the same of how they want to help to achieve a stable mindset that is all based upon the individualistic lifestyle that the individual is going through at the moment, right? Okay. And they also talk to us about, no thank you, they talk to us about how they want to plant memories when the leaders almost get corrupt, right? So here's the weird thing that what's happening here, right? When they want to plant memories when the leaders are about to get corrupt. So this is where the government itself are going to be able to take over this kind of machinery, right? Because these private individual companies don't really have the authority to take over that person's mind and be like, hey, that leader is going to be corrupt. Who is these kinds of people that's going to be decide what kind of a corrupt itself? So this is how the manipulation of government itself is going to be happening on your end of the world, where the governments are going to be manipulating these kind of leaders to follow certain laws and regulations in favor to them, right? Okay. Next, they talk about planting new memories in doctors as well, right? I think if you're going to plant new memories in doctors where they completed a major surgery, and then when the time comes in the very future itself, they're going to be doing the same surgery again, I think this will not happen because it's merely due to experiences, right? So if you're going to have this fake illusion of world where you're going to be putting your memories into doctors, right? No, thank you. Into doctors, right? Where you create a fake illusion where they can do this thing and creates a false confidence within themselves, right? At the end of the day, it's going to just affect the victim more. The victim is going to get screwed over more, not the doctors itself. Okay, so the alternative on our world, right? We already have therapy and rehabilitation, and I think this is already very much sufficient enough compared to what you're going to bring out, which is the ability to rewrite memories, right? Okay, so Ken have already talked to us about how this kind of ability abilities that create support structures, right? People are actually, the level that you get upon these support structures, the level from the very bottom that you reach until you're finally rehabilitated, that is the experience that people want, not something where you can just magically erase with the proof of your fingers and then it comes back. Because we tell you that it is the habit of the people, right? It's what people are craving for, right? Like if you're into drugs, it is habit, you're addicted to drugs. But taking away the memories of drug is not going to make you not be de-addicted to drugs, right? Okay, next point, let's talk about private corporations, right? No, thank you. A private corporation can still sell these companies to government, right? Meaning that anyone who owns this has the absolute agency to literally dictate a person's memory, right? Which means that government has the right to indoctrinate your memory to be pro-government. This is similar to the censorship that is what's happening in China, right? Or for example, to forget past atrocity that the government have been committed, right? Secondly, right, when we talk about these kinds of stuff, right, children can be brought by parents to be indoctrinated, right? Especially because children can't consent and they can easily be manipulated in the very first place, right? This can happen like for example, religious indoctrination, which is bad because they never really consented to it and it changes their life drastically. Like you are forced to follow a certain type of religion in the very first place, right? Okay, lastly, we're talking about how the soldiers can get their memories rewritten by the government to become merciless and without sympathy, making them a literal killing machine, right? And deprived of their humanitarian rights, right? Where they don't feel anything and they just kill just for the sake that they are ordered to do so, right? So, and they are deprived of these humanitarian rights, right? Okay, next, private corporations always find a way to abuse their powers and they are always profit-driven. Understand that these kinds of companies, they are profit-driven companies, right? They are profit-centric, right? That means it is easy for people to buy over their companies if it is giving the CEOs or the presidents of these kinds of companies the profit in the very first place. No, thank you. So let's illustrate how bad of it is a society in your end of the world, right? Because understand that the memory itself is what identifies you to be that very person in your life, right? Because you're not you anymore if that memory itself is gone from your very own perception in your own mind, right? So understand that you are your own memory, right? Imagine, okay, so this is why when you want to talk about suicide rates, and your memory is literally what shapes you, right? What you're made of, right? So if you're going to be talking about suicide rates and stuff like that, I think it's merely due to the lifestyle of the people itself that causes this kind of stress and not due to the memory itself, right?
For the bell, please.
Okay, sure.
Okay, you must understand the fact, even if you're able to rehabilitate them, the explosive argument in our side is we have the urgency to immediately mitigate the problem and it does not reoccur again. Where in your world, when a person is simply triggered with that past event, they're more likely crumble to the emotions.
Okay, you see, right, when you take out something from a person, right, a memory from a person, right, they don't actually learn the value that is needed for them, right? There's no lesson learned, there's no value learned from that very experience itself, right? Which means that like you have a bad trauma of cutting yourself with a knife, right? The next time a person goes into this machine, rewrites that history, and then they're still going to be playing with the knife in the very first place, right? So when you are your memory, right, erasing those memories would actually be suicide in the very basis, right? And the person doing it is murdering yourself. You are basically murdering yourself. And it's suicide that you are removing your own memory. So therefore, go with side opening opposition.
Thank you very much, Diallo. To start the closing half of the debate, I'll firstly call upon the Member of Government, Nguyen Ding, to present her speech. Here.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
First and foremost, closing government doesn't agree with the entire of opening government's classification of this debate. Firstly, we think that this debate is about assessing how memory affects the quality of an individual's life. Second of all, we think that having private organizations run this entire technology is a strange policy. We think the mechanism on CG works something like this. We think that this is going to work like any other medical procedure. And for clarification, we think this is a procedure that will be available for people who have already run out of all alternatives. And firstly, they have to be of legal age of consent. So meaning that parents can't just like abuse their children and then indoctrinate them with writing their memories as opening opposition wants to push to you. But second of all, we think that this is also going to be something that is regulated by the government, meaning that people can't misuse it and use it to like justify abuse or something. Lastly, we also think that on closing government, memory change and memory alteration is something that is permanent, meaning that when DPM says things like their memories will just switch back on if they get triggered or something, we don't agree with that, because we think memory alteration is permanent and is something that cannot just be switched on because someone saw like remnants of their past life. Now, to deal with opening opposition, just a couple of things. We think that the entire bench doesn't understand the incentive structures behind people erasing their memories. We think that we're not necessarily erasing the identity of people to begin with. If people even want to consent into these procedures, it has to be something severe. Like, your average individual doesn't wake up and randomly decide to like erase half their lifetime. But furthermore, we think that people who want to opt into memory erasure are also people who've already hit rock bottom. They are people who have no more hope, and like we think that we are able to give them that choice to be able to live out the rest of their lives with dignity. Lastly, we also don't understand the strange characterization that the governments of our world are going to indoctrinate their people and like force them to fight battles, right? To begin with, there's no analysis to show why that's true and why governments, like just because they have this technology, will start indoctrinating all their citizens. To begin with, we think governments need to appear rational so they are not voted out of power and so they just don't abuse human rights. But furthermore, we think that like we can just assume that we're debating in a world with rational government. And like we think that the case on closing government comes out, we're focusing on principles and impacts, not some far-fetched fantasies with minorities, with like situations that are minorities and won't necessarily always happen. Now, where do we differ from opening government? To begin with, we think that our burdens are just completely different from opening government. We think that our burden is not to exterminate rape, it's not to exterminate abuse, or God forbid, we're not trying to exterminate authoritarian dictators, but we think that these are burdens that are all slightly out of the picture. But we think that at the very least, closing government can assure that people live better lives and that they can achieve closure. And we think that these are all benefits that are far more than opposition can ever claim to achieve on their bench. Our burdens are twofold. Firstly, we're going to prove why this world is inherently better than status quo. And second of all, why we're able to allow individuals to better enjoy life and have better qualities of life. Now, second of all, we think that opening government also primarily talked about exterminating the externalities of the world, things like dictatorships, things like rape and abuse. We think that we will explain things on a broader scale and we will have a case that it's less niche than opening government. We think that our case applies to anyone in any circumstance and how it betters an individual specifically and not just like a victim of like abuse. CG today in today's debate enters with 3 lines of extension. Firstly, we think that you have to understand the concept of memory, and here is where we slightly agree with opening opposition. We think that memory is something that no one consented to, and yet we think it's something that makes up the most fundamental building blocks to being a human. We think that this is a burden you're shackled to until the day you die, and yet you can never opt out of it, and yet you never consented to it. People with traumatic experiences never consented to seeing those, like never consented to experiencing like those events, right? And we think that you never had an option out of it until this motion. We think closing government gives people like the power to be in control of themselves and allow them to fully access the right to life. And why is this the case? We think that this policy is inherently principally consistent to the gateway right of the right of life. We think that to begin with, people with traumatic memories never consented to experiencing them, never consented to having their memories be tainted by this, right? We think this is not, as opening opposition says, as erasing identity, because that is simply extreme. We think that this simply gives people control over their lives, reclaiming what is rightfully theirs, right? We think that the reclamation of identity and having more control over your existence of your existence as a human is an inherent good in which you allow people to further access like having a good life instead of constantly being shackled by trauma, instead of constantly like having to like pay for therapy and having to constantly be negatively affected by their past memories. We think you give them control and they're able to actually be better humans. And what are the practical outcomes of this? We think this looks like self-actualization, in which people are no longer shackled by the grip of traumatic memories. We think this means that people, especially victims of traumatic experiences, are able to better explore their identity beyond the boundaries of trauma and better define themselves. They're able to see beyond their past experiences, they're able to see beyond their memories, and they're able to actually forge a life for themselves. And this is a lot better, and this is far more benefits than opposition can ever claim to accomplish, in which they like condemn individuals to having to constantly relive their trauma, in which their alternatives are just like band-aids that don't actually solve anything. Things like therapy only curb the problem and they don't actually solve it. We think when you're presented with a solution, you should take it. But second of all, we think we have another stakeholder that hasn't been talked about in this debate, things like memory loss victims. We think when illnesses like amnesia and Alzheimer's exist, we think that we are able to fix these with with this technology. We think when you have records and family testimony, we're able to rebuild the lives of families which have been torn apart by the cruel reality of memory loss. What does this look like? We think you're able to help them live full lives in which you take away the pain of having to constantly like face their family but only know them as strangers, right? We think that this means that we have fulfilled our burden coming from closing government, in which we're able to help people live better lives, in which we're able to improve the lives of the average individual. But before 6, opening opposition, I think.
Given you do agree that identity is crucial to memory, people are naturally incentivized to program the most pleasurable memories. How is this literally not suicide when you literally erase who you really are?
Understand that the average individual doesn't just wake up and decide, I'm not like that happy with my life, therefore I'm just going to rewrite my identity. This is also, above all else, a medical procedure that people can only opt into once they've run out of all alternatives. So basically victims of trauma which therapy has not been entirely like effective and things like that. So we think that when you have the government regulating it, you have to like consent into having your memory erased. But second of all, we think that people who do choose people who do choose to use this like technology are not completely irrational, and they're not just going to decide that I want to rebuild my life from scratch. We think this this applies for those who think that their situation is severe enough for them to have to erase these identity, to erase like this part of their memory. If not, they're not able to live a fully functioning life. We think that the comparative is that the world on closing government looks like people actually being able to like attain closure. For people who have been abused, they're able to pursue a life beyond PTSD. But second of all, we think most importantly, we now have people who have a heightened access to the right to life, in which government alternatives like therapists don't actually work. We think the solution is right here. OP is presented with a solution, but refuses to allow people access to it. We think we're able to better the lives of average individuals. Proud to propose.
Thank you very much. To start the case for closing opposition, I'll now invite the member of opposition, Umar, to present his speech. Here.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. There was a lack of characterization as to why memories are uniquely meaningful. I think I'm going to do a few things in this extension. First, I'm going to talk about why memories are inherently unique to a singular individual, that memories are personal. Secondly, I'm going to talk about why consent doesn't really work in all circumstances because of things like coercion, and because even all the mechanisms that we talk about for people to make a consented decision, it's not going to work. Secondly, I'll talk about why you ruin the social connections between people, and I'm going to respond to a few of things that are coming out from both governments. So first, CJ says that people haven't consented to traumatic experiences and therefore they have the principal right to get rid of them. I think maybe that's true, but there's still a net positive utility that comes out of having these memories. Why is this so? I think because of reasons that I'm going to provide to you later, I think the human experience of you experiencing certain challenges is one that's uniquely meaningful because A, the way in which you make better decisions in the future is through having these memories in the past, right? Because then you're able to have a holistic view as to what your memories in the past were, and based on you knowing specifically what your individual strengths and your individual weaknesses are, then you're able to make the best decisions for yourself. I think secondly, they say that therapy is insignificant. Here's the comparative. We think that some people will still choose to not undergo memory alteration for a wide range of reasons. A, because maybe they think it's something that's dangerous, whether that's true or not, it's insignificant, and people just don't want to do it. Secondly, they just think it's something that's they just don't want to do it now. Regardless of what the reasons for them doing it is, it means that some people will still choose to take up therapy. But the point in which you have many people moving towards memory alteration technology in the first place is to reduce funding for things like therapy. So you have less support for therapy, you have less support structures for people who still don't want to go to memory altering technology. This is some form of coercion as to why you force people to undergo memory altering tech in all circumstances, because the alternatives that are available for them are significantly reduced. CG has to defend this coming out from WIP. So first of all, why memories or even bad ones are still essential in individuals' life? I think A, because memories complement each other and act as a foil, right? A mildly unpleasant memory that you can reflect upon also makes other positive memories more valuable, right? So this means that if your life is just comprised of memories that are just simply all positive, you're never going to have any form of meaning from these memories because you never had the weightage of being able to weigh them against memories that were unpleasant, right? But let's talk about circumstances where you have things where people undergo huge traumatic experiences, such as rape or anything else that's traumatic towards them. No, thank you, I'll take you later. I'll actually take you, okay? So the reason why this still doesn't work is that we think people are still able to make different ways as to how they deal with this. Obviously, I'm not going to deny that these things are bad towards them, but we do that there are other ways of doing so. Secondly, because I think it also teaches you like life lessons, right? I think because memories are personalized, you're able to interpret these things to what's the best decision. I think I already told you. So let's talk about why people can't consent meaningfully. So OG says that you can people such as psychologists, right? I think CD would like partially like agree with it. I think even if it's true that psychologists can't advise you, the reasons why they don't work. Because memories are especially unique to the individuals that experience this series of events that led to them having that memory in the first place. Their advice can never truly be representative of the merit and demerits of undergoing the process of altering memories, right? People understand that this like psychologists cannot understand your intentions in all circumstances. Why? Because only you are able to weigh holistically the memory in question that we're talking about to you, right? To all the memories that you have. Even if you consult a psychologist, they don't have the access to understanding your past experiences that led up to you interpreting the value of all these memories. See, because of subjective memory, especially when it comes to memories that you want to alter, these are probably things that you may want to keep private, right? Because you think there's personal reasons that you have the principal right to privacy. We think that maybe you don't want to be exposed for certain things such as sexual identity, religious beliefs, or health problems. Or even if people have committed something bad in the past, I think people still have the right to undergo due process of law rather than being held better than self-incriminate entirely. So next also we tell you that some form of social coercion to do so, right? I think you're forced to defend a world which the society has access to this technology, and this debate does not have the fiat for this debate to happen on an individual level, right? That means the society has as a whole. There's some coercion for individuals to opt into this system based on the feedback that occurs from other people who have gone through this process, right? So this means that you can find like support structures online where you can talk about people who have gone through this process, whether it's something that's good or bad, based on the characterization I already told you, where we think that your memories are uniquely individual. Other people's feedback is unrepresentative of the best decision possible because they specifically cannot weigh in on your impact, even much so less than a psychologist, because at least a psychologist gets to consult you individually, right? You are more likely to buy into this feedback if it's someone you know personally providing you with evidence, because there's some form of trust right there, right? I think this happens on two levels. First, when the feedback is very good, then you're more likely to buy into this system. But also B is that you even if the feedback is very bad and tells you that you shouldn't opt into this system, and you think people who might have found some form of positive utility and found some benefit from opting into the system, they don't opt into it because they're more likely to buy into the feedback of other people that tells them that it's bad, especially because people might be skeptical of this new technology, so they like to buy into any things that say, oh, but this is dangerous. Next analysis as to why you ruin the social connections between people. Understand that many experiences are not unique to a certain person, and I think they are often shared within a group of people. This means at the point which you lose out on the certain memory that is shared with a group of friends, I think a few things happen. I think you lose the meaning of being able to experience things with the other people in your life, right? Also, I can't see the chat, so if you want to say something, say it out loud. Yeah, okay.
So why is coercion such a big thing on closing opposition? Because therapy in status quo is the alternative, but no one argues against therapy with the argument that it's coercion, therefore it's a bad thing.
Because we think in a world where this technology is new and we think it's supposed to bring you some benefit, I think people are less likely to argue against the merits and demerits. You have less discussion and discourse as to whether this thing is good or bad, because you think people have a trust in technology, right? You think that technology is objectively good. They have no form of able to alter, right? The reason why are the argument I provided to you weighs out over OO's argument is because OO's argument about how government exploitation and changing the minds of masses is contingent upon the government's ability to indoctrinate all these people anyways. We said this debate doesn't happen on that level, it happens on a micro level as to how it's uniquely going to affect people, right? So this means that especially when you ruin the social connections between people, because it's less likely for you to have meaningful connections at a point which you lose out important social experiences, people are unlikely to make the connections with you as they could previously, because the memories that you share together just don't exist within the person anymore. But lastly, we tell you that certain memories are complemented by the existence of other memories to the ability for you to remember something. So even if it's a memory that you don't want to alter from your memory, is still a memory that you may lose out on, because the meaning of that memory is oftentimes comprised of previous memories that you may get rid of, right? So we think that after time, this memory loses hope. So what's the comparative, right? I think under our side, people who want to go through this shouldn't be able to, right? Because we think that they cannot consent to the harms of doing so, because they don't make rational decisions, right? They got coerced by the rest of society. And we tell you that secondly, you lose out on the meaning of memories in the very first place. Third, you lose out on the social connection. We tell you it's specifically important because the only way in which you can connect with other individuals in your society is through your ability to experience these memories. Very, 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 very proud to be on.
Thank you very much, member of opposition. To begin the whip speeches, I'll first call upon the Government Whip Arjun. Here.
Before I start, can I be heard clearly?
Yes, you can.
Okay. The people we're talking about in today's debate are the ones who've literally lost all hope to live, who literally want to kill themselves because life has completely turned against them. These are the people who CG essentially wants to help. I'm going to do a few things in my speech today. Number one, provide to you rebuttals towards both the opening and closing opposition, and moving on. And after that, move on to my two issues, substantive issues. Firstly, rebuttals. I think that the whole idea essentially coming out from CG was we were empowering individuals to literally reclaim their identity that is a loss of the, like, for instance, traumatic incidents that they accrued in their life, right? This is not a destruction of identity, but rather a reclamation of what you deserve, which was previously lost. But also recognize that the whole of opening opposition's case and benefits is based upon the premise on relying on the fact that people are strong enough to move on. We have to take into consideration that status quo is so vile and degrading that this ability is not only difficult to access, but also there's no sort of benefit that can arise out of this, which leads me on to my third rebuttal about why hardships are so problematic for self-growth. We think that whilst hardships allow you to understand the fact in life that life isn't necessarily going to be easy 100%, it's extremely problematic because hardships don't teach you to better yourself as a person. People aren't equipped with the ability to fight hardships in their life and sort of allow a sort of educational benefit to materialize. Also, let me just clarify that the illustrations provided to you by opening opposition were pretty absurd, because when they came up and made really absurd claims saying that governments will resort to brainwashing individuals to become merciless killing machines, I think considering that such acts are considered like war crimes, right, and have heavy charges in the ICC, I don't think any rational government would want to do something so reckless and so crazy. Moving on to closing opposition, I think Member also completely based the benefits off of their speech upon the premise that individuals are able to actually access the alternatives. I think that number one, therapy is expensive, which means that if you're a disenfranchised person, if you lost the birth lottery, you literally are screwed for the rest of your life. But also, CG never championed for defunding alternatives such as therapy. We explicitly mentioned that this brain rewriting memories was literally a last resort for when all other alternatives have failed and you're literally looking for a last escape. Moving on to my substantive issues. The first, is it legitimate to rewrite and create new memories? And second, is the reclamation of identity worth more than the preservation of your past self? The first issue, I think this was a really important issue that remained unanswered in the opening half of the debate, which was essentially whether or not is it legitimate to rewrite and create new memories. I'm going to explain how exactly and why CG won this issue. What exactly was the clash that revolved around both opposition houses, because we have to take into consideration that a lot of the material coming out from closing opposition was pretty derivative of OO. It was basically essentially memory rewriting would be abused to literally brainwash people to commit really heinous acts, and opposition essentially presented alternatives that justified against memory writing. But why essentially was this problematic? We think that not only the opposition, number one, failed to realize that therapy and consultation merely curbed the implications of trauma, but also there was still no ability to rid a person for all their trauma. We think that what essentially it's translated to was that even if these backups were improved, even if you literally churned and funneled more money into improving these alternatives, you will never essentially be able to completely take trauma away by virtue of it being essentially printed in your mind forever. Comparatively on government, the ability for the most disenfranchised and vulnerable in society to live a fulfilling life exists because we literally give individuals the opportunity to reclaim their identity and live life and be able to actually self-actualize in the future. We empower individuals to have the agency to write their lives. I'm now going to do a best case versus worst case scenario. We think that taking opposition's best case, right, essentially where people do stay true to their past selves, the alternatives are decent. Why is it still problematic? We have to note the fact that a lot of the benefits aren't concrete, as they're only able to materialize if people can access it. Why is it so problematic to access things such as like therapy? We think that number one, individuals are afraid of confiding in an individual like about their own personal trauma and things like that. They're much more opt to like rewrite their memories, because literally that they don't have to confide in another person and literally retell their trauma all over again. But also by virtue that therapy is just expensive, even if you subsidize it, a lot of people will still not be able to afford and access it. And by that virtue itself, the scale of benefits that can materialize are drastically diminished compared to government's worst case. We think that even if not everyone can access this like sort of memory rewriting, we help individuals reclaim a part of themselves which was lost. We think that this is an extremely gratifying process because you give hope back to individuals who like retrospectively had no hope in the first place. Moving on to my second substantive issue. Is the reclamation of identity worth more than the preservation of your past self? We know that this was another issue that wasn't also answered by member. The problem that essentially remained unanswered by both opposition houses was whether weighing your past self is more important than the reclamation of your new identity. What exactly was the relevance of your past self in the debate? I think that number one, it was essentially that you're able to preserve the social circles that you grew up with, but also that your past identity is the most important and you should never ever change it, because that literally formed who you are as a person. I think number one, the fact that identity is something that we essentially, the memories by which we form our identity upon was something that we never consented to. And by this virtue itself, we have this right to be able to truly live life to its fullest and reclaim this, as mentioned to you in my member of government speech. But also, now weighing off what exactly is the relevance to your past self compared to like your reclamation of a new identity, we need that even if you had to rewrite your identity, that isn't problematic at the end of the day, because you are staying true to yourself. You are doing what you want. This isn't something that's going to completely destroy your past self. But even if coercion was not mutually exclusive in the debate today, because this was a term that was thrown around too many times, why is it still worse off on opposition? We think that number one, on government, it's rewriting your memory, but the individual does not accrue trauma through the process of rewriting. Comparatively on opposition, if you're, for instance, an LGBT child, you are going to be subjected to so much pain as a result of being coerced into like literally conversion therapy. We give individuals the opportunity to literally, in a snap, take away all the trauma and literally allow them to reclaim their identity. But also, I'm going to shut down the whole absurd idea of how we essentially destroy your social circles. We have to take into consideration that some things in life come and go. Friendships, relationships come and go. You have to accept that they're not eternal. And by this virtue itself, we do allow individuals to form new relationships. We have to understand that through memory writing, even if they may lose out on their past social circles, they aren't hindered from being able to form new relationships. So essentially, what Exposing Government brought to you? We've proven to you how we essentially help the betterment of individuals, and even though we don't solve really like unrealistic expectations like completely eliminating trauma, we at least allow individuals to truly access their right to life, reclaim their identity, and we've proven how all the harms proposed to you by opposition are really not mutually exclusive and they aren't really harmful to closing government. With that, never been prouder to propose. Thank you.
Here. Thank you very much, Agafwit. And to close the debate as a whole, I'll call upon the opposition whip, Hadi.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
All right. I'll be starting in 3, 2, 1, now. Okay. Your past is what makes you who you are, and if you alter those by introducing realities that never existed in the first place, you create a convoluted thinking person. Motivation is one of the factors that has created and influenced many strong leaders and individuals. When a person has endured hardship and wants to achieve a certain goal as a result of that hardship, they normally feel a lot more demotivated if they don't get what they want after multiple attempts. But what pushes them more is the agonizing pain and that they had felt, and it may not be as much as a social burden as government side claims it to be, and I will explain why. Let me give you with an example of with the help of an actual recognized figure, Malcolm X. Malcolm X had suffered many losses for any ordinary child to bear. He had losses. He had suffered racism as a child, and it had created a spark in him. During his teenage years, he had become during his teenage years he was very he was committed into many different crimes because his mother, many of his relatives and close relatives and close family friends had passed away, or maybe have been sent to jail because of being black and the racism that they had endured. So Malcolm, who needed an escape from his losses, would have taken it as a no-brainer and replaces past memories if memory writing technology had existed at that time. But then what happened in reality is that Malcolm, who was a teenager at that time and wanted an escape, eventually grew up and he became older and more mature. And once he realized that something had to be done about the black community, he had actually fought life and limb for the black community in order and had achieved many social had achieved many liberties for black people and the black community itself. Now, in our world, in reality, where memory writing technology doesn't exist, we have many. I could go on about many examples like Malcolm X, but to sum up my entire point, in the government's world, what this memory writing technology will do, it will inevitably reduce the amount of strong figures and individuals that will be coming into this world. For the very same minority communities that CG said we were vulnerable, you give them the opportunity to stand up and breed discourse amongst the community. So you frown with the structural oppression that minorities face. You're more likely to become altruistic for your community and achieve justice with the help of your community, because you have an obligation of them as they are your support structure. Now I would like to identify some clashes and between the various opponents. So first off, CG, they had mentioned about Alzheimer's and why did we as CEO beaten them? Because Alzheimer's is a disease where people forget the memories every day. So you will need to rewrite memories on a daily basis. Moreover, your brain damages in the diseases and have to be rewritten memories on patients with these diseases, and it's not going to work. The people are already physically damaged in their head, which makes it almost impossible to regain the original state as they stated. People with Alzheimer's or amnesia can never find out the weightage of their memories, and that are significant to them when you rewrite the years of life, which is what my member of opposition had proven to you. When other people lose the original feeling of who you were, and because of that, this brings harms to both the people around them and the patient themselves. And when they forget who the patient was to them, and the patient experiences these abnormal treatments. Then another thing that they mentioned is that therapy is expensive. You make therapy more expensive because the majority of funding goes towards. No, thank you. You make therapy more expensive because the majority of funding goes towards the development of technology. Therefore, even if CG says that the memory alteration is a last resort, therapy will be more inaccessible and ineffective when there is no funding for them. Closest government also says that you're able to protect your past identity. You limit people's ability for people to experience the full extent of life. But especially since people are in trauma, they will often search for the immediate relief. But probably the only important thing coming out of CG was that that for people with crippling trauma, this is not the only option for them. They have not structurally told you why therapy is effective. We say because we have therapy that is accessible and well-funded, and they can well accessible and well-funded, that they can change. Even if we can't completely remove the memory, it is good because they can learn to make decisions in the future. Okay, moving on to open government. They spoke about mental health issues. This was quite little. No, thank you. The the opening government spoke about mental health issues. There was quite little analysis as to how exactly mental health issues will be changed under our side. Then they also mentioned about you make people forget that they ever committed a crime. That's worse because you don't teach them why crimes are bad. They can relearn the crimes. Then another point they made is that PM says only certain memories are allowed to be erased to prevent irrational decisions. But DPM gives but DPM gives you intuitive examples on a micro level that do not seem significant. Our response to this, my member had already given a POI that was not responded to. The principal contradiction is not dealt with, and therefore the question the question of all memories or only certain memories are allowed has not been answered yet by OG. The next thing we say is that there is a point in which certain memories are banned from being removed by legal process. People who still want to remove them will use the black market. Then why are we more relevant than OO? OO stated they have more incentive to create support structures. Our extension deals with the following. They just asserted this. They never prove what the type of support structures are built. Then OO also mentioned human experience is important. Our extension was, we told you why memories are personalized. Then OO mentioned government can use this technology to exploit certain people. Our extension was, it was not proven why this is likely to happen. It is a blown up outcome. We have more realistic outcomes. Then why are memories even bad ones in an individual's life? So then I have to also add on, why are memories even bad ones essential? Why are memories even bad ones still essential in an individual's life? Memories complement each other. Memories complement each other. A mildly unpleasant memory, disregard them. Disregard them. I would like to just end this by saying, why do we win this debate? We believe that that we win this debate because our extension has been proven far proven that the most valuable in this debate. Our extension has been by far proven the most valuable in this debate, and when we are able to prove to you why this is harmful on a micro level, because without this working on a micro level, nothing is going to work on a macro level. We are also the side of our bench that deals with the government, that deals with both the houses of side government, and our extension is able to combat the mechanism of OG and CG. With that, I have never been proud to propose.
Thank you very much. I invite everyone to virtually cross floor and shake hands. Thank you for the great debate. The judges will now proceed to deliberate, and we will come back after this. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Awesome debate.
Thanks, guys. We love you. Bro, we want your IG. Which one? Cempaka for speaker IG.